Sometimes the most important discoveries in physics become mirrors for society. Scientists, without thinking about politics or even about humanity itself, search for the laws of matter, and suddenly it turns out that they are describing not only metal, not only electricity, but the human system as well. And the deeper they penetrate into the essence of substance, the more you begin to understand. Everything alive obeys the same laws: movement, friction, resistance, loss, and purity. Among all the discoveries of the 20th century, there is one that is almost mystical in its beauty. When physicists first noticed that under certain conditions electric current could flow without resistance, it shattered the very idea of the limits of possibility. Material brought into a state of purity and order allows energy to pass without the slightest loss. Electrons move in harmony, without collisions, without losing force, without turning energy into heat. Everything becomes transparent for motion. Energy flows as if through a crystal. This phenomenon was called superconductivity, and there is something in it greater than physics. It is a model of how any living system must function if it wishes to survive. Energy also flows within society. Not electrical energy, but human energy. The energy of labor, thought, pain, hope, and will. This energy rises from below upward, from the people living at the bottom, toward those who make decisions at the top. From below come impulses, requests, ideas, signals about where something hurts and where help is needed. From above, there must come a response, decisions, distribution of resources, actions. This is how the life of any community is arranged, like a circulation. From below upward goes the signal, from above downward comes the answer. If this exchange is clean, if the impulse reaches its destination without distortion, and the response arrives where it is awaited, society lives. If not, it begins to suffer. And it suffers not because people are bad, not because the people are lazy or the rulers are evil, but because between them there stands a layer, like a mutna layer between transparent layers of water, a layer that does not conduct energy, but feeds on it, delays it, distorts it, transforms it into heat, into noise, into its own existence. This layer is not a handful of surnames, not an office, and not one particular official. It is the entire bureaucratic ecosystem that has grown between the human being and the decision itself. Officials at every level, politicians who protect them, oligarchs who buy them, consultants, public relations specialists, media, corporations living off contracts and tenders, and those who control them from the shadows. It is a festering tissue of governance that has spread between the source of life and the center of power. Its goal is not transmission, but interception. It lives off the energy rising from below. Every impulse coming from the people, whether pain, request, or idea, becomes delayed within this zone. Part of the energy is lost in endless approvals, reports, and chains of subordination. Another part is appropriated, converted into personal gain, career, influence, money, and status. And what finally reaches the top is no longer living energy, but a processed report, as though passing through an old transformer that produces only a weak humming instead of current. This layer always says, we are simply translating society's signals into the language of governance. But it never translates. It rewrites. It does not connect. It inserts itself in between. And the more people believe that this is how things must be, the thicker this tissue becomes. If one looks at society as a crystal, then the people are its lower structure, the foundation of the lattice. Governance is the upper part, the node where decisions are made, where the will of the system is formed. And between them lies a layer of defects. Not simply cracks, but an entire zone of scattering where the impulse collides with obstacles, breaks apart, and loses direction. When a signal rises from below, it passes through this layer, and there its form changes. Direct pain becomes a convenient formulation. A real need becomes a political slogan. A living impulse becomes a statistical item. The upper structure, receiving this signal, no longer hears the living breath of society. It hears an acoustic copy, a symphony of reports, vocabularies, and resolutions. And it reacts not to reality, but to a model. The energy that should have caused movement turns into the heat of self-praise. The system begins to overheat like an overloaded wire, losing meaning and power. This is how social resistance is born. It is the same resistance that exists in physics, but expressed in human relations. Every link, every signature, every approving authority, every bureaucratic filter adds another fraction of friction. And while those above assure everyone that everything works, below, the current of life moves slower and slower. At that moment, the layer becomes not merely an intermediary, but a parasite. It does not simply obstruct the current, it feeds upon it. Its entire existence is built upon the fact that impulses rising from society never reach directly. Its budgets, salaries, bonuses, ratings, and influence grow not from creation, but from delay and processing of energy. This is a complex biology of power. The layer resembles tissues within an organism that were supposed to conduct blood, but began feeding upon it themselves. They not only fail to pass the flow onward, but grow because of it, transforming into a tumor. And the more the body suffers, the more nourishment the disease receives. In physics, this is called structural degradation. When a crystal is contaminated, electrons no longer move directly. They wander, scatter, collide with impurities. Energy turns into useless heating. The system becomes inefficient. Eventually, from overheating, the structure collapses. Society collapses in exactly the same way, not from external blows, but from internal friction. From millions of tiny collisions of interests, from the slow distortion of impulses, from the transformation of living energy into the heat of words, reports, and positions. And then the question arises, is it possible to exist at all without this layer? The answer, not entirely without it, but without its opacity. The problem is not that it exists, but that it is non-transparent. Any system requires a channel of transmission, because not every individual can directly govern the complex mechanism of a state. But this channel must be clean and visible. It has no right to become a separate organism. It must not feed itself from the flow. It must be transparent, like a crystal through which light passes without leaving a shadow. Transparency is not a slogan. It is the physical condition of superconductivity. As long as the layer remains murky, as long as its internal movements are hidden, as long as nobody knows where the energy disappears, no reform will produce results. Because it is impossible to govern what cannot be seen. But if this layer were made completely transparent, so that every action, decision, movement of resources, approval, and report became visible to everyone, then it would cease being a feeding ground for parasites. It would remain, but as a clean structure of transmission rather than a living organism feeding itself. Then the energy rising from below would pass through it without losses, and those above would be able to see exactly where the impulse became distorted, weakened, or began nourishing bureaucracy instead of society. There would appear the possibility of measuring the conductivity of power the same way physicists measure electric current. Not by promises, but by results. Transparency creates not only control, but efficiency. When the layer is visible, it cannot make unnecessary movements. Every bureaucratic friction becomes noticeable. Every delay, every long approval process becomes instantly visible. Everything that does not function is brought into the light. This destroys parasitic cycles, those that feed upon chaos. The system ceases to live by the principle of the longer it takes, the more profitable it becomes. Instead, it begins to live by the principle of the faster and more precise, the stronger the entire organism. Thus, a new form of efficiency is born, not managerial, but physical. Superconductivity in society is when a signal passes not through dozens of reporting levels, but directly, without distortion, and everyone can see exactly what is happening. This transparency does not weaken power. On the contrary, it makes it precise, like a beam of light moving through a perfectly clean channel. When the bureaucratic layer becomes transparent, it ceases to be festering. It becomes a supercrystal, a medium in which every particle is visible and responsible for its own place. No parasite can hide there. There is no room for leakage. Any energy coming from below reaches the top without loss and returns back in the form of actions visible to the entire people. The upper structure itself ceases to live within illusions. It is no longer surrounded by filters. It sees the living current of society, not numbers, but reality. It begins reacting to real signals instead of reports. And then the state ceases to be a machine with self-feeding bureaucracy and becomes a living organism whose nerves have been restored. Such an organism feels pain instantly and reacts. It does not wait until crisis becomes catastrophe, because the signal is no longer delayed. This is the condition that may be called social superconductivity. It does not require heroism, revolutions, benevolent rulers, or new ideologies. It requires only one thing: purity of the channel. When every human being can see how his impulse rises upward and can see the result, the system cleanses itself. And then this enormous, heavy bureaucratic mass ceases to be a parasite. It transforms into a transparent lattice, into a supercrystal through which the energy of life passes. It ceases feeding upon the flow. It conducts it. It ceases being a living organism with appetite and becomes a pure form of connection. And this is the true evolution of human societies, from a layer that feeds upon others to a structure that serves others. Perhaps only then will the word state cease to sound cold, because the state is neither enemy nor savior, but simply a structure for transmitting energy. When it works honestly, energy moves like light. When it does not, it becomes heat that burns everyone. Humanity has long lived in the condition of an overheated conductor, where friction, resistance, and noise were considered normal. Now it is time for humanity to cool itself, to cleanse the structure, align the lattice, and make the layer between the people and governance transparent and manageable. Then, the energy of ideas, labor, and will shall no longer disappear into emptiness. Then, power will cease feeding upon the people and begin feeding them. And then, for the first time in history, society will become not merely a system, but a superconductor, a supercrystal in which light moves without loss, and governance and life are one and the same movement.